Matters now, and the horror start on the ASX set to continue today. For his thoughts on that and the rest of the economic news at the start of 2016, this election year, is Treasurer Scott Morrison. Treasurer, thanks so much for your time. As I say, the ASX forecast to fall further, shudders right around the world on global markets. What do you think's going on here?
Well, it's still very early days, and the analyst reports that are out and commentary that's there is, I think, very mixed. What we're seeing happening in China is not unanticipated, really. I mean, the growth forecasts we have in China and MyEFO are on line with what was being said by the IMF and the World Bank and the OECD, largely consistent. We kept those in place at that time. But, I mean, this is a time for just being, I think, very cautious, but at the same time having a great, I think, sense of resilience in the strength of the Australian economy domestically. I mean, globally, there is volatility. There's no question about that. Australians understand that. But the fundamentals of the Australian domestic economy, I think, are very sound, and particularly when you look at the employment growth over the last year, over 300,000 jobs created over the last year. We are seeing our domestic economy transition, and we need to diversify. So things like iron ore prices or one market, albeit our biggest trading partner, China, being so dominant on our economic scene. We're also seeing in the US, I think, in much improved signs, and that really does provide a counterbalance to what we're seeing in China.
With the oil price, though, that has a flow-on effect because oil and gas prices generally are seen in the same context, and we're about to become the biggest gas exporter. So impacts for us from a number of different fronts, not just China.
Well, low oil prices also mean low petrol prices, and it means inflation also remains very checked, and these are positive things also. So there are two sides to these coins often, and what we're seeing is a lot of movement at the moment. But I think the smarter analysts, those looking at this, I don't think are overreacting to what we're seeing at the moment. I think it's always a time when you see this sort of volatility to keep a cool head. The government's plan is exactly as we need it to be, and that is to continue to do things that boost earnings and boost enterprise in our economy, to boost employment and jobs, and we're seeing those results come through, and that's very heartening. And also ensure we stay very focused on the fiscal task and ensuring that our expenditure as a percentage of GDP continues to decline, which it is, as was contained in the MyEFO statement late last year.
But we're seeing already the impact of the hip pocket of Australians. You're saying the employment numbers are good. Yes, they are, but the wages growth, the lowest in 50 years, according to the Access Economics report out this morning.
Well, this is why we need to do things that boost earnings. This is why we need to do things that boost enterprise in our economy. We are not earning enough as a country, and that obviously has an impact on revenues. And in the last MyEFO statement, we had some major changes to our growth forecasts, and that did lead to a significant writing down what some of those revenues were. But the most significant part of those revenue changes in the MyEFO was actually by having a more conservative outlook on growth than had previously been put in the budget. Now, that was just about being, I think, up front and having a very realistic set of numbers in that MyEFO statement, and obviously they'll be under constant review. But the numbers we put in that, particularly on growth forecasts and particularly around things like commodities and so on, seem to be holding out at this point, but they'll be under a constant review as we lead up to the budget in May.
The big task for you is the tax reform issue right now. Where can you give our viewers a sense of where this is at? Because obviously the timeline for the white paper and so on was delayed with the change of leadership. Where is this at? What are your plans here? And do you need the states to be on board before you take your tax plan to the people?
The first point is this. The only reason we're looking at the tax system is to ensure that our tax system can be more supportive of growth and jobs. It's got nothing to do with how our levels of revenue to deal with the budget issue. The budget issue will be addressed by ensuring that we get expenditure even further under control. And we need to remember that, I mean, over the last 30 years, the only time when you're getting budget surpluses is when you're around about 25% of GDP on our expenditure. Now, even on the budget and the forward estimates, that gets us to 25.3, but we need to go further over the medium term to achieve those sorts of goals. So you've got to keep the pressure on expenditure restraint, and that's what we're doing. And then you've got to grow the economy. changing the tax system is one of the biggest opportunities we've got to ensure that we can grow the economy more strongly than we are now, because income tax rates, corporate tax rates, these sorts of things are holding Australians back who are out there working and saving and investing. And that's why we need to change the tax system. We need to change it so we can make our tax system better for those who are already out there doing the hard yards, working, saving and investing.
But do you need the states to sign up to any changes you make before you go to the election, or do you go to the election, get a mandate and say to the states, okay, this is the Australian people talking, they support this plan, you've got to back it as well, put pressure on them through a mandate?
Well, we're working consultatively with the states, and there were meetings before Christmas which were going down that path. But at the ultimate arbiter on these things is the Australian people, and we've made it very clear that any changes we would like to make to boost jobs, boost growth in the economy by changing the tax system with a better mix of taxes, then that's something we'd put to the Australian people. And there'll be an election later in the year, and there'll be an opportunity for those full details to be put to the Australian people before an election. Now, we'll continue to work through these issues and how we'll engage the Australian people and the states and territories as well over the months ahead.
There are 2 tax options under consideration, according to reports at the weekend. Can you confirm that for us? Are there 2 main options that you're looking at?
Look, they were speculative reports, and I'm not about to comment on media speculation. The position the Prime Minister and I have taken very consistently is, of course, we're looking at all the various options that are available to us. The conditioning factor on those is what is going to grow the economy, what is going to boost jobs. Now, there's proposals today which are reported from Financial Services Council, which demonstrate that you can change the tax mix and grow the economy. And so the goal here of growing the economy, the goal here of growing jobs can be achieved, at least as that presentation demonstrates, by changing the tax mix. Now, that's one set of options. There are other options, but the thing we have to do is get the income tax monkey off people's back. And that is what is going to hold them back this year. And we don't want them to be held back because we're in a more globally volatile environment. There are further pressures in the global economy, which are not things we can do anything about. But what we can do things about here back in Australia is ensure our tax system is up to the task of the 21st century.
But finally, to you on the election timing, because there's a big discussion point at the moment as we start this year. You've got a lot of political capital with the popular new Prime Minister. Obviously, you want to use it to get serious reform done. In that context, do you think that it's better, well, privately apparently you're saying that it is better to go earlier?
Well, that's not true. I don't know where those reports came from. I have no idea, Kieran, but I think it just goes to where the silly season over Christmas leads to all sorts of media speculation. We're governing. That's what we're doing. And an election will be held later in the year, and the Prime Minister has set that out, and he believes that will be at the normal time. Australians just want the government to get on with governing. That's what we're doing. There's a lot of uncertainty globally out there at the moment, and I think they would be reassured by the fact that the Prime Minister, the Treasurer, the full Cabinet, the Ministers, our whole team is just focused on good, stable government, which will see
so we should
growth
proceed on
in
the basis
the economy and
the
jobs.
elections in September?
Pardon me?
We should proceed on the basis? We should proceed on the basis
That's exactly
that the
what the Prime Minister said,
September?
and so I don't see why anyone would think anything different.
All right. Treasurer, appreciate it to start the year on our first New Look First edition. Thank you very much for that this morning.
Thanks a
appreciate
lot,
it.
Kieran. Good to be with you.